This is going to polarize a lot of my religious people. I'm into deeper truths, okay? And this is the content that comes into my awareness. And this is pretty much going to sum up the purpose of our lives from a state of higher awareness. Now, our current awareness is based on our five senses. And pretty much those five senses are purely physical, okay? We forget about the sixth sense. In fact, 7 if you include a sense of humor. Now, because we're in the state of a limited awareness to just purely the physical and the finite, we forget that there is a much broader perspective that we are not aware of. Now, all of the more enlightened beings have found a way to actually transcend that current awareness, and mostly it's by a sense of meditation or yoga that allows them to break beyond just that awareness that is our five physical senses, and they're able to tap into a higher intelligence. And all of us can do that and then see a much broader perspective and deeper truths. Now, the deeper truth of this existence that we are having now is pretty much the holographic representation of where we are now. And we think it's completely the be all and end all and that this is all real. It's not. There's a part of us that is still in the wave form, the non-physical form, okay? The infinite form, not the limited physical form that we are aware of right here and now. And that is the form that's connected to the collective, to God, to source, whichever label you want to give it. And that is our ultimate reality. That is the absolute. What we're experiencing here and now is the relative. We tend to project all this relative reality onto the absolute, and they are different things. Now, the best way for me to describe and to expand awareness regarding our reality here is to look at a great example that's given to us, dreams. What happens is we then go to sleep, our consciousness calms down, we then have a projected mental view, and to us in that dream state is very real. And we experience it like it's real. And sometimes we have a bloody nightmare, and when we wake up, you've ever had that feeling where it's like, and you're in actually quite a state, and then you realize, oh, thank God, it wasn't real, it was a real plane. Welcome to your soul's perspective of reality. So a dream is one consciousness projecting a real. Go up to your soul level. One consciousness, collective consciousness, projecting itself as a real. Now, this is how it's so easy for the soul to be in a state of complete and utter unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, and no condition that we are projecting in this real is really real. So you can transcend that whole thing. So suddenly you can understand now why anyone that's done any atrocity on this planet can still go to heaven, can still reach the absolute, because that's our ultimate destination. We return from whence we came. You then realize that the worst things that actually have happened to you are not in a ultimate reality of existence. It's this projection. And that's how it is easier for us to forgive it and to let it go and not be attached to it. But we are fiercely attached, and because of our fierce attachments, that is what causes us the biggest misery. Now, the gurus and masters that have come before that know this are able to transcend all judgment, all of hatred, and they're able to be in that blissful state of surrender, of acceptance. Now, acceptance is a magnificent place to be, because it's that unconditional state. Now, this is higher grade stuff for all of us to get our head around, because it doesn't mean that you can't set boundaries, and it doesn't mean that you have to condone everything. But there's a big difference between condemning something and not condoning it. The soul will never condemn. Do you realize that even a state of forgiveness is divine? It's actually not. Forgiveness is a polarized perspective, because it's painting me as saintly and you as the sinner, and that you have to repent. It's all conditional. Our current state of awareness doesn't realize that this reality was super consciously conspired, and a hell of a lot of soul intention has gone into this. And all of the souls that we hobnob around with are all connected into the absolute. And we actually have given permission for all things to happen prior. So this doesn't mean that now suddenly everything is now set out and fate is completely. Yes, there are certain patterns and lessons and experiences that you want to have. So if you are traveling from destination A to B, you could either go all the way around this way, all the way around, or even whichever way. So there's an infinite amount of ways, but there is divine intervention that will make sure that you have your experience that you've actually pre-planned and pre-conspired to and asked for. This is dealt with in a beautiful book. Can't think of the author right now, but the book is called Journey of Souls. I'll try and print it in somewhere. Give you a picture. Where a hypnotist hypnotized his test group, and all did and brought them back prior to when they were born, and they all, every single one of them, I think 25 people, all admitted to having a soul council, a soul family that they would sit with, and they would actually have a plan and have a discussion regarding the current life that you are experiencing. Huge intention has been placed into this incarnation. The problem is now, however, we're not aware of that. So when the shit hits the fan here, we immediately fall into a state of huge condemnation, huge judgment, huge anger issues, and then we polarize ourselves, and we get into the survival state, which pulls us into our more egocentric awareness, and disconnects us from that higher awareness that sees the unconditional picture, and then allows us to filter through the divine intuition and inspiration that comes from a higher intelligence. We all have access to it. It's not exclusive to a few people. It's inclusive to all. So the ultimate purpose for this life for you is to come into the awareness that there is actually, to come into that transcendent awareness, that actually there's nothing that we can do to change us returning to the absolute, to our divinity, to our soul state, to that collective consciousness, to that astronomical intelligence from which everything is born out of, and to realize that whatever we experience here is not, even though our current awareness is the relative to good and bad, hot and cold, black and white, there is that transcendent beyond it, which we can realize that if we bring those two, which are contrasts, and bridge them together to make the gap, okay, to bring it into balance, we then have the full picture, because those contrasts are there for us to see a broader perspective. You can't know hot if you don't know cold. Everything would just be the same temperature. We wouldn't know if it was hot or cold. Same goes for good and evil. Once we can get it right to realize that the absolute is the divine perfection of all of that, the inclusivity of all of it, and there is actually just a balance, and the one feeds the other and the other feeds the other, and they have to coexist as relative opposites because they're related, and they are actually one and the same thing. They're just extreme contrasts of the same principle. Then you realize the unity and the oneness that exists within everything and all of us. And that is our purpose, to come to that awareness, because when you come to that awareness, you then transcend all the condemnation and the judgment of everything, and you realize that life, we can have the unconditional awareness to the reality of the relative, because we now realize that the ultimate reality is the absolute, where there is only harmony, where there is only divine perfection, where there is only intelligence. And nothing is in doubt. There's no outcome in doubt for anything. Every T is crossed and every I is dotted. And there's nothing that you and I can change about that in this life. And the irony is the harder we run around trying to control all our conditions, the more the universe very cleverly makes those conditions harder and stronger until we actually have to surrender and to accept and hand it over, give up, give in. And in that way, we stop seeing that I'm right, you're wrong, we're the goodies, they're the baddies, because we're the sum of all the parts, and we had to experience all of them so that we can know ourselves better, and we can come to a point of not letting the outside conditions govern our internal decisions. The choice has always been our free will. The divine purpose of this life is for you to get to a stage of unconditional self-governance of your emotions and of your judgments. And once we get to that stage, then maybe we can start looking at unconditional love, something that we're here to rediscover again as well. Because how do you know what love is until you know what it is not? And we're discovering what it is not because we have huge attachments. And that's all part of this beautiful dance. And while we discover what it is not, if we realize that what love is not, that it's leading us to what it is, then suddenly it's not evil. It's not bad. It's nothing to be condemned. It's nothing to be judged. There's no reason for any hatred in it. And once we can realize these deeper truths, suddenly life can be a whole lot easier. Then it's easier to get to that stage of surrender and acceptance. Interesting that in the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, the last stage is always acceptance. And then once you make this discovery and then you suddenly realize, then suddenly it doesn't really matter what your nationality is, and if somebody's nationality is different, because it makes no difference, because we just here to explore this contrast. It doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. It doesn't matter who's black and who's white. It doesn't matter who's gay and who's straight. These are just beautiful things that are here as contrasts, and neither is right nor wrong. We're the sum of all the parts, and we're dancing around both to point us in the direction of the absolute, which is the collective, the unity. And once we can grasp this, then suddenly we can end the wars. Then suddenly we can stop this fixed mindset that I'm right, you're wrong. Then suddenly the left wing can realize that without the right wing, we cannot fly. And the right wing needs the left wing to flap so it can fly too. That's the trick to humanity. And none of us are getting that, well, select few of us are getting it right. Because everywhere we look, people are prodding us and pressing us and pushing our buttons to separate us. Whereas the ultimate reality and the deepest truth is we're all connected. We always will be. And there's nothing we can do to change it. Peace out. Much love.
The Big Cigar.